let's get started to the meeting notes. So we have a bunch of follow-up topics, and Sindre, could you get the notes there? So the first one is the version 1.5 beta.
Yeah.
So you could probably start on that.
Yeah, so I haven't really pushed the beta yet, but it's in the repository, and it includes getters and setters, new syntax for defining getters and setters that compiles to native ES6 getters and setters, which is working well, I guess. It has a special syntax for now for when you create a property, you can add a native true option to that property to make sure the property also compiles to native getters and setters. Because in the future, in Imba 2.0, all properties will compile to native getters and setters. So that is one thing. There are a few bug fixes as well, but the other important thing is Imba SFC, which we can should we go through that in a separate point, or should we just start going through that now?
I don't have any strong preference, so you can choose.
Yeah, we can start. It's basically Alexander, who's been the spearhead for this feature. I have used a lot of single file component things before, but it's I definitely see the benefit, and especially when it comes to the styling, it makes things a lot cleaner. So initially we started experimenting with just using CSS modules, and Alexander started using that, added it to the Hello World template, I think. But it's not really that good, and we found that we like the approach taken by Vue.js a lot more. So the initial challenge was to find a syntax for defining styles inline in Imba. I'm not sure if we nailed it just yet, but the syntax we came up with is basically just use special multi-line comments for now, so that we don't need to introduce. We haven't even needed to make any changes to the parser itself. So now it is actually, you simply define a special multi-line comment somewhere in the file. You can have multiple, of course, which starts with CSS or less, or Sass, or stylus, or SCSS, and then optionally you have a scoped param that says whether the styles inside will be scoped or not.
So styles, you mean stylus, right?
Yeah, sorry, stylus.
Okay.
And the whole point here is that when you have CSS scoped, which will be probably the most common use case, then it is actually the way that only the paragraph elements that you can see inside this file will have these styles. So what essentially happens under the hood, just like in Vue.js in their SFC implementation, every element that is created inside of these classes, these tags here, gets a unique ID or a unique data attribute appended, and all the styles in the file will also have this data attribute appended to the selector. So even if I include some other thing here, like I include section from another file, which has another style, like paragraphs inside this should be red, these are mutually exclusive. They're not competing with one another. They end up, after being compiled through Webpack, they end up styling only the elements inside their own file. So it's pretty neat. It allows you to, you can also add some unscoped CSS blocks as well. And you can, with the same syntax as in Vue, you can also do like section, I think it's like this, color red, This will basically mean that any element inside of a section, this is what is scoped here. So only the section elements that are defined here will be applied. Everything inside of this scope selector are kind of global, like any P element, even if it is defined inside of this section and included, etc., it will also be get these styles.
I think it looks great, and it will make like developing big applications easier. You can already do that by having a separate CSS or whatever file. But when you, at least I got exposed to components like this year, and I just saw like what it does to a massive code base, and yeah, I'm excited about this. I think this would be really cool to have, and it makes it easier to like structure your application in a certain way.
Yeah, I agree, and I think I even think I will probably use it myself. Even we might even go over to using that in Scrimba and GitSpeak eventually, because CSS is kind of messy, and in a big project you end up having tons of CSS files that almost but not always map to the corresponding component, and there's just all this mess everywhere. So I definitely think it will be a good addition.
So what do you think the timeline is on this? Is this something we can push together with 1.5, or do you think it's too big of a change?
I think it's, as I said, in the language, in the sense of the actual language, there is no change, since it's only like we only interpret the multi-line comments and see which multi-line comments are special, and then we expose them in the compiled output of the compiler. And then it's the Webpack loader that does all the magic. Like it's a Webpack loader that sees that, we need to add these things to the tags, and we need to rewrite the CSS selectors in a certain way. One cool thing about this is this is exactly like it is in Vue.js SFC, so I'm not saying that we've invented anything here.
No.
But it's exactly that. It's very cool, since when you use Webpack, these blocks are actually treated like if they are separate CSS files with some magical rewritten selectors. So you can use you can use style loader, you can use CSS like chunked module things in the Webpack. You can use all the things that you would usually use in Webpack to modify your CSS, like make inline assets, cache them, all these cool things. When it comes to the release, if we release it as a separate package, then we could release it immediately. The only thing I'm hesitant about for including it in 1.5 is that we are still actually using Vue.js component compiler utils, a package, which depends on PostCSS and PostCSS selector rewrite and some other packages, which, as you know, in the NPM dependency hell, ends up actually including hundreds of dependencies. And Imba is today has 0 dependencies. And I really like the notion of the core language having basically no dependencies.
Yeah.
So there are the two solutions I can see is to create a very simple PostCSS. We're only using PostCSS to rewrite the selectors. It should be easy enough to parse ourselves. It's not that big of a thing. That's one option, but that will take longer, so that couldn't be pushed like this week. But the other option is to release an Imba SFC package or something.
But I don't like. I'm confused because the way you described it, it's like there's no language changes, there's no parsing involved.
Yes.
Why can't we just release a separate Imba package loader? Like,
that's what I mean.
Imba SFC loader
as a loader. Yeah. So that's probably the way to go, I think. Release it as a separate Imba SFC loader, and then document how that will work with Webpack, how the configs you will need to make it work. So I think that's That's probably the best solution. So maybe we should decide on that then, that the compiler will, we can probably release 1.5 today and release it only with the compiler changes.
I still don't get it. Like, what kind of compiler changes? Or this
Only
is for
with
the
thing
getter
that-
and setters.
Yeah, getter and setters, and that we actually expose the multi-line comments.
Yeah, because that would have like zero impact on
Yeah.
current behavior. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea. Let me see. I was trying to find a new syntax marking for follow-up topics. That's not. Let me just add. Yeah, I think I'm gonna add an emoji star or something,
Yeah.
so I can actually remember this. So we're gonna do the release today.
Yeah.
Nice. And yeah, we need an emoji rule list so we can describe things, but this is gonna work. This will work for now. Okay, cool. That's really great. And I really look forward to the single file components thing, because that's one of the things right now, like very envious from Vue. I think Vue is a great framework, but like just that part alone is like, makes it so nice with various layouts and how you can structure things. Yeah, so do you have anything else to add there?
Not that I can think of.
One thing I'm curious about related to the ES6 roadmap, have you thought about like how you're going to approach the various, are we just going to cherry pick from ES6 and then say, this looks good, this is something we want, or are we going to try to have like, we're going to support ES6 completely?
I don't think, first of all, the ES6 or all the proposals is a huge thing, and I don't think we need to explicitly support all of them. I really don't think it matters that much. So whether we compile destructuring of arrays, whether we compile that to native ES6 destructuring of arrays, or we roll our own thing that we do now, I don't think that matters that much. What matters is the features that are important and used in ES6 that has no equivalent in Imba. Like being able to iterate over, loop over an iterator. Things like that is very important because that's actually used in code in ES6 and there is no equivalent in the Imba syntax.
Yeah.
But the other things that some of these are already supported, even classes, I think, is like ES6 classes is still just a syntactic sugar on top of JavaScript, basic JavaScript prototypes. So it's not hugely important that we quickly move over to using ES6 classes because they are interoperable in any way you look at it. So the most important ES6 features are the ones that you cannot really hack around and use in Imba.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, like generators and iterators and things like that. So I think the most important ones are just iterators and object destructuring. I think those are the two main things. And probably decorators, even if that is not part of ES6 officially yet. I think decorators are hugely, they're extremely nice to have.
Yeah, so maybe we could take a sidetrack. So what are decorators?
Decorators are essentially, they are essentially ways to rewrite methods. Like you can have, let's say I define a class run, do something here. With decorators, you can modify functions and properties with a special syntax. Let's say you have included a function that responds to the like that has a, what do you call it, like a signature as a decorator function. It takes a few different arguments. This is a decorator defined in ES6. So then you can have like, oh, I want to log something from this function. I want to benchmark it. So I want to log the time it takes, memory takes, whatever. Then I can basically from somewhere import bench, whatever, from decorators, if you have some decorators defined in the file. And you can, in Imba, you would use some sort of syntax like it's my keyboard. You basically just add this on top of the function, and while this is here, the function will actually be wrapped inside of another function that you define that might start taking the time.
Oh yeah, now I see it.
So it's a way to build up functionality.
Yeah, I've seen this in Java with Spring, where they have controllers, and then you define like the REST conventions, and they use that at syntax, at blah blah blah, and then they're going to take your function and do some magic, or call it in a different time.
Yeah, exactly. So JavaScript will also use the at syntax, but we're using it for something else, so we need to come up with another.
Yeah, I see. Cool.
So that's decorators. Yeah.
So the next topic is the merging of the branding pull request. We did merge that. We might have lost some changes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
We haven't pushed it.
No, we haven't pushed it. I don't want to push anything yet. But if you go to imba.netlify.com or something, you have to correct it.
I need to pull up my keyboard as well. Thank you, Apple.
So there is like something. Oh, nice. I'm the same.
Yeah. There it is. It's a new logo.
Yeah, so it's not perfect. With the sizing and everything. But I was thinking, I made some changes locally. It's no point in showing it right now. Yeah. I still want to clean it up. But I was thinking of, if you look at the Preact.js page, I've shown it before, but that's basically what I want to use as inspiration for structuring Preact.js. It's a website.
Yeah. That's another annoying thing with Safari now. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was thinking something like that, because if you see with the search bar, and I mentioned it before, like with the mobile view, everything gets really nice. You can search, you can get what you want really fast.
Yeah.
So I think that's a nice layout. And I was thinking like, so the REPL thing is also nice to just run examples.
Yeah.
But we've talked about this, so that would be like a sidebar, like you have this and then you have the example.
Definitely, we need something like that. And we have from Scrimba, we have the Monaco editor with Imba highlighting and all that stuff, so it should be easy enough to create a playground like this.
Yeah, I think so too.
And with CSS components, it will be nice as well. If we make that work, then you won't need a separate file for the styling, and then we could do basically everything in a single file. And we don't need to care about multiple tabs and things in the editor either. We just, in the examples, we just have at the very end here, we just add some styling.
Yeah, and that's exactly how they do it in the view world with the style syntax.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be good. It's going to be very pleasant writing like examples, because you have one file, you have one context.
Yeah.
So that's going to be good. I don't really have anything more to add there. I have some things I'm working on, but I think it's better to come back to this later, maybe 2 weeks or something. Like it's going to be 4 weeks, like 2 meetings. Yeah. So do you have any questions on that rebranding?
No, I don't think so.
Cool. So the next topic is the process to V2. So I've tried aggressively pushing topics I'm interested in. Single file components is one of them. Yeah. So that's very good that it's moving in a positive direction. I looked at the TC39 process, and they have these various stages. I don't know if we want something that formal. I was hoping Magnus would be here so he could. Maybe we don't need anything really there, as long as we communicate actively and often enough, like with the meetings.
Yeah, I think this is a good start, like these bi-weekly meetings compared to how it was before. And I think it might be premature to start forcing a formal process for proposals and stuff before there are an actual community to deal with them. Right now it would just feel like extra work and a hassle.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think it's better to come back to this later. Right now, I don't know how many companies in the world are using Imba, but like when you have stakeholders, people who have invested a lot of time and money, then it makes sense. But right now, like I haven't heard anyone like scream or anything. So I think also the RFC process, which is the next topic, is something also we should also leave that for later. Yeah. Because it's like making it more formal. Because if you have like millions of lines of code, then you just have less than a million, right? So so it's still okay. Painful, but still okay, I guess.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. So that's all of the topics for today. And I don't think there's any other topic on the agenda. Do you have any more or something else you would like to take up?
I don't think so. I think as you mentioned at the end here, the new branch for removal of column syntax will be ready to test soon. It will be nice to get version 1.5 shipped so that I can get back to the 2.0 branch, basically. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. The upcoming year for Imba, I think, is actually going to be quite a lot bigger than the previous 6, because now we are starting to get a community going, and we are starting to. Alexander is pushing me to make changes, and we are discussing it on an almost daily basis. And we start full time developing with Imba in a few months. Then it's going to be an interesting year.
Yeah, I think so too. Like I have a lot of crazy ideas that are lined up. Just have to balance it all off and time it correctly. So I think I'm going to set up the topics for next time. So we have it, and I really like to have my headings correct. So this is going to be a H2 there, and follow-up topics. So we can do that before we wrap up. So we're gonna have a separate Imba SFC loader to test single file components. So it's not official yet. So if we figure out it doesn't work or syntax changes, you can still break in changes. And then talk about the getters and setters release. So are you thinking of releasing a 1.5 for that or a beta for that? I thought it was stable, but I haven't really looked at it.
So we could just release the 1.5 non-beta as well, but I haven't really tested it that much.
Okay, so
it might feel premature.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Beta release.
Yeah.
Have you done any other beta?
But should we, maybe the separate Imba SFC loader, should we just make it the Imba loader? Because right now, Imba/loader, Imba includes a Webpack loader inside of itself. Maybe it would be nice to just say that eventually we will have a separate loader outside of the core Imba package, and instead of using Imba SFC loader, we just call it Imba loader, like view loader. We can discuss that later. It's not a big thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds
Yeah.
interesting because the default one already has the loader in it,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
But so what happens if you specify Imba as a Imba loader? Won't you? So which loader will it use?
If you specify imba dash loader,
Mhm.
it would use this loader that we're talking about
Okay.
now. But right now you need to write imba slash loader.
Okay. I'll just write that vanilla.
Yeah.
So and then the getters and setters beta release. What else do we have? Yeah, so the branch for removing colon accessor.
Yeah. Hopefully that will be at least one of the main topics in every meetup going forward, in every meeting.
Yeah.
Where I can talk about the actual progress, and there are, even if the basic removal of colon syntax is easy, then there are changes required to the tag syntax compilation. There are a lot of minor changes around that will need to be updated.
Yeah.
Then I can just keep you up to date with these changes and also see how it affects, because it might affect the performance as well, not by a lot, but I'm not even sure if it will happen in a positive or negative direction. It might even be positive because we need to rewrite some of the tag compilation things to, yeah, it's technical, but we can, since we're going away from setters, from like function setters where you have create element dot set title something dot, and we chain these things, then we'll need to be like create element, store it in a variable, then element dot title equals something, then element dot something. We will need to remove the chaining because we're using native setters. You can never return from a native setter. It will only return the value you try to set to it. So I think that might even improve in performance, because a compiler don't need to care about the return value from all these.
Yeah, so maybe that's something we could look into, making a benchmark on that.
Yeah. Other than that, I'm happy to see that Vue.js are now moving in the path of using Imba-like techniques in their compiler to compile templates, and they are the Vue version 3.0 is much faster than the old one, and I think in some cases it will probably still be slower than Imba. In other cases, it will even be even faster. So it's going to be a good, interesting year for performance of these frameworks as well.
Nice.
So Imba had this 6 years ago, but it was very not known and it was not popular. And I am genuinely happy that it's other frameworks are now also focusing on that kind of performance.
Yeah, it's like a win-win for everybody.
Yeah.
Right. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That was all.
yeah, I think that's all of the topics, and then we have some other things, but we can take those offline.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Stop share.
Thanks.